2 of the Nick and the Nathan show. This is the second episode, so I can't say welcome back, unlike last week where I couldn't because that was the first episode. How are you guys doing? Let's start with you, Mr. Nate. How are you?
Doing great. It's summer, so it's pretty normal, free-flowing, just work and YouTube. That's about it, so...
Hey,
I'll take
that's
it.
not a bad thing.
Yep.
How about you, Nathan?
I've been doing good. I've been writing a couple songs, doing some production, so it's been going well.
That's exciting to hear. Topic for today that we wanted to discuss is our creative workflows, because as people who make things on the internet, that's our favorite topic. Honestly, if you look up any channel outside of whatever they're normally talking about how they make what they're talking about is always a popular topic. So we're going to follow in the footsteps of many greats today and talk about our creative processes. This is something I realized. I was listening back to our first episode the other day, and I kind of realized we didn't really spend any time introducing anybody on this show. So, Mr. Nathan, do you want to start off with a little bit of an introduction of yourself so
Sure.
that people understand a little bit where you're coming from, and then that'll kind of feed into the creative process here.
All right. I'm Nathan. I make a lot of music. I started out a few years ago with playing cello. I still play cello to this day. I do a lot of classical music. Outside of what I do with my more progressive music that I produce, I started playing bass in my school jazz band, and that's really how I learned bass. I learned a lot of my non-main instruments just by kind of messing around and teaching myself. So I have a small collection of a few various instruments, and I can play them all to some degree, and I love producing and writing music for them, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I've licensed some of my work to Nick here.
Yeah. If anyone has listened to the Ansuini live show or any of the main channel videos I've made recently, you'll hear some of Nathan's beautiful music in the background there.
Mm-hmm. And about 7 or 8 months ago, I found this old camera, like in a closet that we had. It's like a 2008 Canon EOS Rebel.
Nice.
With a kit lens. And I've been teaching myself on that, and I've been happy with a lot of the photos that I've taken, and I plan to take a lot more.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Thank you. History of me.
I appreciate it. Yeah, good to should have done that at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
How about you, Nate?
So I'm very focused on video production right now. I flirted with photography for a little bit. So I had an old Instagram account, but I kind of stopped doing that to focus more on videos. So I make like travel montages and like I remake movie trailers is kind of the big thing I like to do. Something I haven't publicly
he's
said
good
yet.
at. By the way, he's very good at that.
I
Better
really
than
liked your Joker.
J.J. Abrams.
Joker trailer. That was amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I loved the Joker one. That was one of my favorites. And a little bit of an exclusive for the show here. My next one's going to be Inception modern trailer. So it's already basically done and ready. So it's probably my favorite trailer I've ever made. So I'm excited to put that one out. And yeah,
it's just 90 seconds of the top spinning at the end.
The top spinning is in there a couple times, but yeah.
That's awesome.
That's about it.
And what kind of workflow do you use?
Oh,
are you editing in some professional Super Bay that all of the J.J. Abrams want to get to one day?
This is not your typical video recording setup. I'm on my 11-inch iPad Pro with 64 gigabytes, and that's it.
Nice.
I do 90% of my YouTube work on there. The only reason yeah, exactly.
It's a computer.
But yeah, so I do like the only work I can't do on the iPad because YouTube's mobile apps are terrible. Is like adding end screen annotations and things like that. Just I have to do that on my Chromebook. So I've been getting by with Chromebook and 64 gigabytes, but that's been rough.
Awesome.
Like, so thankfully I was able to find a 512 gigabyte iPad Pro renewed on Amazon. So I ordered that, and that's coming.
Oh wow!
So
nice.
I'll have plenty of storage now. Thankfully.
That's good.
Yeah. So
I can definitely sympathize with that. I'd been, I mean, pretty much the whole history of the Talos of Tech podcast has mostly been on iPad up until recently. And for a long time, since I got the 2018 iPad Pro, I was editing all of the shows, all of the content on this 2018 iPad Pro, which also only had 64 gigabytes of storage. So I totally relate to the gigabyte shuffles as that file app just caches more and more stuff from iCloud Drive, or your Photos app expands too much. I was getting to the point where I was resetting my iPad every week just to be able to edit the tech podcast. It was pretty bad.
Did you have a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte or something that you sold, or like a really crazy spec'd out?
Yeah, so after I did that for a while, I think we were getting by just fine when the podcast was just audio, but I guess at some point in early 2020 we added in the video component, and that just ballooned the data files from hundreds of megabytes to minis of gigabytes, and that's kind of where it was like, all right, 64 gigabytes. I was to the point, because we had two shows at that point. We had the EV podcast and the tech podcast that were doing regular hour and a half-ish episodes every single week. And I was getting to the point where I would have to edit one on my iPad, and I'd have to edit the other one on my iPhone, which was also 64 gigabytes at the time. And both in LumaFusion. And it was, I think I did that for about a month. And at that point I was kind of like, yeah, no, I'm done with this. And I think Apple had just released the 4th gen iPad Pro. And I was like, I'm going to use this iPad forever. And I love making things on iPad, but the problem is the storage. And so I maxed it out. I think it was a terabyte, if I remember correctly. That was what they maxed it out as. And I used that full time for 6 months, and then graduated to Macs, unfortunately. And then I had to leave my beloved iPads behind. So yeah, I did sell that because now what I use an iPad for does not require a terabyte of storage sitting there.
What do you mean? You've got to store every season of The Office on there. Come on.
Every season of The Office, every season of Parks and Rec, and every single Christopher Nolan movie. That's the goal to have on the offloaded. But yeah, I guess I also kind of realized that it's much cheaper just to get like hard drives instead of like paying for it internally when you're just storing like those TV shows and stuff. Or just stream them,
It all comes back to that data hoarder skit,
Yep.
Data hoarder. I'm not a data hoarder. I'm definitely not surrounded by 20 or 30 terabytes of storage here. No, definitely not. I don't have a problem. Well, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that someone is creating like video content on like such a high level that is all on iPad, because it does not get enough credit. Like no. I am. Every time I pick up LumaFusion and I don't know what apps you use for thumbnails or photo editing or whatever, Pixelmator, I'm just always blown away how much is packed into the iPad, just software-wise. You were able to do... I was able for like almost a year to do everything just on a iPad that honestly could have just been a base model, one of those education iPads. Like it's a great computer. And man, I'm pumped to hear that you're into LumaFusion. I'm assuming you're editing with LumaFusion, yeah?
Yeah, LumaFusion and Over for the thumbnails. Over's been working great. I don't know. Do you have Over Pro? Or did you have it?
I did for a little while, but then I figured out there's a way you can add in fonts that you downloaded. Like one of the iPad OS updates a couple of years ago allows you to install fonts, and that was really the only reason why I was paying for the Over Pro was the expanded fonts. But even then, it wasn't really all the fonts that I wanted, and so I was able to get the fonts that I wanted on the iPad, and I did cancel that.
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah, what do you use for your, I would say like Photoshop replacement or something? Like if you need to do tight masks or layers or anything, do you do that in Over still, or do you have Procreate or something?
I'll do the masking in Over for the most part, but if I need to like lower the brightness or adjust saturation, I'll go to Photoshop Fix and Photoshop Mix are the two. They're just free apps that like they're not great, but they work well enough for what I need. So I mean, I'm just getting by on what I can, and yeah, it works great.
That's the name of the game. Just finding what works, and that was my favorite part of the iPad experiment. Just trying to do it all off the iPad. It was like, yeah, I know there's other ways to do it, but like this works.
Yeah,
you know, like there's
totally.
it works just fine. And as long as the viewer doesn't really, notice any, differences in quality or whatever, then there's no reason why you need to be all fancy schmancy. But unfortunately, something that Apple hasn't allowed on the iPad is Logic, and I'd imagine that Mr. Nathan is sad about that.
I would be sad about that if I didn't have my MacBook.
Okay.
Because the extent of my iPad experience is like a iPad Air 2. So a couple of years old, but I've been able to use it for like Lightroom edits and stuff, and I really like the iPad Lightroom app a lot. And the Photoshop app on there is pretty great. I get Creative Cloud through my school district, so that's
nice.
That's pretty nice.
That's very nice.
Like a $50 a month subscription for free.
Yeah.
So I've been able to mess around a little bit with the iPad versions of those apps, and they're just not the same as the Mac OS versions. So I do a lot of like selective edits in Lightroom and stuff, and I have a lot of presets that I use, and I even do some color grading sometimes. So I need I need a laptop for what I do. The iPad doesn't quite work, but
and just the audio engineering side of it, like I used Ferrite on the iPad back before we moved over to LumaFusion for the video component, which also can edit audio. I don't know. I was never super satisfied with Ferrite on the. I don't know if you've used it, Nate, but Ferrite is this kind of clunky, overpriced Audacity knockoff. It's like, yeah, you tried, but it doesn't look good, and it only halfway works sometimes. So,
that's Audacity
I can
too.
understand it. It is Audacity.
I actually did learn
in the 90s.
I did learn like my basic like music production and stuff in GarageBand for iPad though.
Okay.
So that's kind of a one use that I found for it. I'm really glad that Apple has a lot of design and function similarities between their apps and operating systems. GarageBand for iPad is fairly similar to GarageBand for Mac. GarageBand is fairly similar to Logic. It makes transitioning really easy. And they have a lot of the similar instruments, so you don't have to like refamiliarize yourself with their whole software instrument library every single time you switch. So I'm really glad that Apple develops their own digital audio workstation. So it has that Apple magic to it.
Yeah, definitely. And you're on an M1 computer, right, Nathan?
Yep.
How's that going for you?
It's been great. The only concern I have with it is the battery life isn't exactly what I was expecting. Like, I'm not running Safari as my web browser. I'm using Opera, so I'm probably losing a little there. I am doing some...
You heard the Apple sheep.
Sad?
No, you just heard the Apple sheep right in my heart. You left Safari. Oh no.
I never used Safari in the first place. I only use Safari for iOS.
Oh no.
Nick, it's gonna hurt. But I use Chrome too. I don't use Safari. I might switch with iOS 15 because I don't like Safari's tab management on mobile at least. But iOS 15 looks a little better, so I might switch with that. But yeah, I mean, Safari's actually been really bad. When I'm in multitasking on the iPad, Safari it glitches way too much to be useful. So maybe 15 will fix that for me. But yeah, that's why I'm sticking with Chrome for now.
I'm sad to hear that from both of you. We'll have to make that the running gag this entire show.
Nice.
Get the Nathans to switch back to Safari.
But back to my
Yeah.
my battery thing. Lightroom kills the battery, even though it's optimized for M1. Lightroom just drains the battery so hard, and like I can get several, like a lot longer than your standard laptop if I'm just like browsing the web. But like anytime I hop into a single creative app like Logic or Lightroom, you have to plug it in every several hours. So that's
Well, I would agree with you there. I obviously do have a portable M1 device as well, and I would say though, instead of having to plug it in, like currently I run Final Cut for 3 or 3.5, maybe 4 hours before I need to recharge. But back in the day, before the M1, you were only unplugged for maybe 30 minutes tops. You'd be lucky to hit an hour before, because especially when I had a 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro a while ago, and that thing, every minute basically it'd be chipping down a percent on the battery. It was like, oh gosh, you're just sitting there and the fans are going. You're just like, where's the plug?
I'd used a 2015 13-inch Intel MacBook Pro for like a week or so while I was I was doing a little workshop through the local college here, and they let everyone borrow one of their MacBooks, and it got so hot. Like I would there's this like synth emulation program that I run called VCV, and after like 3 minutes of having it on, I could literally fry bacon on the back of that computer if I wanted to. It was deadly hot.
Something that Nate has no idea what we're talking about, because he uses a beautiful iPad that just always stays cool.
Oh yeah.
Like my MacBook, it'll get warm occasionally. Like if I am doing like more than 10 or 15 tracks in Logic, it'll get warm, or anytime I open Lightroom, it'll get warm. But I'm really unhappy with the Lightroom performance on M1. If you can't tell, it's just a little bit disappointing. But
while we're talking about workflows, have either of you tried Pixelmator?
I've seen your video on automation using Pixelmator, and I've heard Marquez talk about it, but that's about it.
It is. Nate, have you seen that? It's also on iPad. No, that's fine.
Yeah, but
I'm such a fanboy over Pixelmator. Unfortunately, I know that there are many better pieces of software. Lightroom, I think, hands down, is equal. You probably get a little bit more professional compatibility, and the actual Lightroom files that you can transfer around. That's not something Pixelmator can really support. But outside of that, I've been extremely happy with Pixelmator, and Pixelmator is also on the iPad. Like, that's something that some people don't really realize. Like, the amazing Photoshop replacement that I use every day on the Mac is also available on the iPad, and it has been available for years. I think it was back in 2016 with the iPad Air 2. Apple had Pixelmator up on stage, and they were demoing their new retouch tool, which was the first retouch tool to like heavily use AI to like replace stuff. And there's a picture, and the guy just took the Apple Pencil, or it wasn't even Apple Pencil that one, it was just his finger, and he just kind of drew over some elephants in a scene, and it just deleted them and replaced it with like this perfect background that you just never guess that they were there. And I was like, okay. So I went ahead and spent the $10 or $20, whatever the app was back in the day, and it's just a one-time purchase app, both on the Mac and the iPad. And that's what I love so much about the software that I'm currently using. Like, there's no monthly expense involved, and I know, Nathan, you have an awesome deal through your school with the Light or the Adobe Cloud subscription. But I looked at Adobe Cloud once, and I priced it out, and I was like, no, sorry, I need to figure out a cheaper way to do this.
Yeah, it's like $121 or $120 a year for just Lightroom and Photoshop. So it's pretty crazy how much they charge.
Premiere or what's the 3D animation one? But like, yeah, the whole suite was in the multi-hundreds dollars a year, and I'm just like, I don't know about this. Yeah. So yeah, I guess if we're going to talk about our specific workflows, let's go through our favorite apps to use. I just think I talked about mine, Pixelmator. Nate, what's your favorite app to use?
Well, it's probably pretty obvious. It's going to be LumaFusion.
Hey, nice.
When I like, I had originally, for the first few years that I ran a YouTube channel, like I had been editing off of an app called Video Shop on my iPhone,
Okay.
and I thought that was good at the time. And when I got the iPad, I was excited because like, oh, I'm going to get to use Video Shop on this giant 11-inch display. And then I download it, and it's not optimized for the 2018 iPad Pros. And
ouch, no.
and I'm going like, since I bought the Pro version when it initially came out, it was like $2 for the Pro version, not very pro, but so I was supposed to get grandfathered in on the new device, and I wasn't, and their support team never got back to me, which I'm really glad they didn't, because if they did, I might still be using Video Shop on the iPad. So, as bad as their customer service was, I'm thankful that they didn't respond, because it pushed me to spend $30 one time on LumaFusion, and it's got like everything I need for what I'm doing. Because I don't need to use that many transitions. It's only got like 8 stock transitions. I really only use like cross dissolve and like the dip functionality every now and then, but and it's basically just got everything all in one screen, like, and it lets you change the layouts too, so I can have all my photos in one corner, have the viewfinder in the other, and then the timeline along the entire bottom of the display, and just being able to touch and squeeze to resize the timeline. It's like really fluid, and it almost makes me not want to even go to a Mac, because I wouldn't have that touchscreen functionality. But I feel like I would get used to editing on a laptop. I feel like I would.
I still
maybe
miss
not.
it.
You still
Every
do?
single
Okay.
day I miss it. Every single day I'm in Final Cut and I'm moving this mouse around, and like I just want to quickly select an option over here. I have to like move my finger all the way up there, click it, and then move my finger back down. It's like, if this is an iPad, I could just have my other hand that I was holding it with and just tap that, and it's I love LumaFusion.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. There's something magical about touching the content that you're making. You just feel, a lot closer to it. Like, here when you're using a Mac with, keyboard and mouse, you got your content up here, and then you got your input down here. But with the iPad, it's just you're touching the content.
Exactly.
And it's just such a more intimate experience. And yeah, I miss it every single day I open Final Cut. I'm like, you're not LumaFusion.
Now here's what I think about the whole tablet laptop thing.
Okay.
I have a friend who I often debate on Windows tablets and stuff, because he has a Surface, and he's just a really big supporter of 2-in-1s on the Windows side of things. And I always tell him, I'm so happy with my Magic Trackpad on MacBook Pro. I love how well it's integrated into the software, and I love the feel of it, and I'm never going to be able to go back to a mouse after using this trackpad. Like, just in messages, for instance, like it's the same as iOS. All the gestures, you can swipe with 2 fingers to either side of a text heading, and you can like either pin or delete that thread. And there's just like all these other gestures that are really well incorporated into the OS that you're never going to get on a mouse. I mean, maybe the Magic Mouse, but I just love my trackpad so much. I wouldn't ever really want a touchscreen. And I've used Surfaces before, I've used iPads before, and I just find the touch a little bit limiting with like right clicking on stuff is one thing, like holding and trying to drag stuff just isn't ideal. And keyboards are pretty great. I know you can get the Magic Keyboard and stuff, but
I would say you're right. Magic Trackpad is the best version of a mouse ever. So much so that every time I've ever had an Apple desktop, when I was on the Mac Mini trend, I always made sure I had an Apple Magic Trackpad, because that thing is, I love that. I hate mice. That's not how I do stuff. But I will also say that the level of intimacy I experienced with the touch screen and just being able to like touch the content, and I don't know, just it feels snappier just moving your hand around the display. And you are right with the right mouse click, and that's something I should bring up.
Sounds like you've got a very intimate relationship going on with these touchscreens.
I do. I touch them a lot. It's these touchscreens. The thing though is when you're on a Mac or even on Windows Surface, actually maybe Surface specifically, it's not necessarily designed to be touched, and so the icons are a lot smaller, and settings are kind of buried in menus. They kind of tend to get buried. If I want to like merge a clip in Final Cut, it's this select, right mouse click, combine clip, ask me for a name, and I click enter. It's kind of this whole computer process. Where in LumaFusion, everything is, you have to like think that the software developer has to do a good job laying stuff out on iPadOS in a way that is convenient and kind of exposed. And it's almost easier to approach, right? Because when I sit down in Final Cut, it's like there's the big timeline at the bottom, and then your viewer and your media, and there's like 6 buttons that are tools, and you're like, okay, now what? But with LumaFusion on the iPad, the whole bottom has like a bunch of different little options, and everything is a lot more transparent, I guess, and it's just not as buried. And I think if software developers took the time to design a decent Surface app where, using the Windows 11 amazing UI, which definitely wasn't stolen from iOS 7 or macOS Big Sur. If they were to take the time to kind of expose these options and not leave them buried in these menus, kind of bring them to the surface, I think that you would have a lot better experience, I guess, with the touch over the mouse, because I think the touch is a better input method. As Steve Jobs says, who wants a stylus? God gave you 10 fingers. You're gonna use them to touch your stuff. That's how we interact with stuff in the real world. And why are we using these mice? And the mouse is there for the precision, right? But if we can remove the need for that level of precision by better UI, combining options, making the software figure out what you're about to do and adapting stuff, I think that is, and just simplifying stuff, just allowing you to use your fingers. I've monologued enough about my fingers and my devices and touching them.
That stylus thing is funny though, because when with precision, like whenever I'm using LumaFusion, I'm always using the pencil. Like I'm okay. I do not.
So you're a pencil guy.
Yeah, huge.
Pencil guys unite.
Because when I'm dragging the timeline, like with these trailers, like I need to get music timings like really precise. So I'm using like hundreds of seconds, and like with my finger, I'm kind of blocking the time code a little bit. And with the pencil, since it's super thin and fine point, I can go like 100th of a second at a time when I'm trimming a clip, and that's really useful. So I agree with Steve Jobs when he says who needs a stylus in some ways, but it is very helpful for the iPad in some other ways. So I would say that. Don't need it on the iPhone though.
Definitely not. Or the Apple Watch. Can you imagine?
Honestly, I think that would make
terrible.
the Apple Watch a little bit more like capable, honestly, because you've got a 40 millimeter screen. I mean, got to make the most of it. But
Yeah.
I would need to get a microscope out to see all the options if that's what we were doing. Sit there and write an essay on my watch with an Apple Pencil.
Just do the finger, draw each individual letter, You could write an
when
essay
they
in a few
run out
days.
of ideas, instead of adding a camera to the Apple Watch, they'll just add the little magnetic charger things to the Apple Pencil, and you'll just be able to pair your Apple Pencil to your watch.
They're gonna announce the Apple Pencil Mini. It's just like telescopes out, right?
Yeah,
You can keep it on the wall.
yeah. There you go, like a little golf pencil mini.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. We've talked about some apps here. Nathan, did you? Nate, yeah, Nathan. I got confused there for a second. Who we were talking to? Nathan, did you have a chance to say what your favorite app was? I don't think we got to that.
It's got to be Logic. I really just love how it's consistent with the previous apps that I've used, and it also just has a lot of stock sounds and plugins, which most other digital audio workstations don't have.
This is true.
So, say like Ableton, for instance, You can get the base version, which is like $400, but it'll only have so many sounds and plugins that you can use. You have to pay another $300 for all of the Ableton sounds and stuff that they give you, and that's just outrageous. Like,
Yeah.
we're music producers. We don't make a ton of money unless if you live in Los Angeles. Like, it's just
Everyone thinks that everyone here on the internet makes tons of money. Don't let the surprise be open to the public.
But
Yeah.
I'm just really happy with all the Logic stock plugins and stuff, because there's not only a large variety of them, the ones that they have are really good. I can think of one good example, which is the Logic compressor. A compressor is basically something that makes the low sounds the same volume as the high sounds, so everything sounds consistent. You really want to use it on like bass and like keyboards
Audio
and
tracks.
stuff. And the Logic compressor just has really like has a lot of capabilities and a lot of versatility for what you can do with it. So I'm really happy with the Logic compressor, especially.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lots of Logic.
They used a lot of Logic to make Logic. I can tell.
Well, maybe that's why they named it that. Who knows? Cool. What about photography? I mean,
Photography.
do you guys using Lightroom? I'm sure, and that kind of workflow. Okay.
Yeah, so my photography workflow is, I'd say it's a little bit more spontaneous than most like photographers. I just bring my camera with me like whenever I travel, and if I see something that looks like a good shot, I'll take pictures. I will plan out shots in advance sometime if I'm going to somewhere like California where there are like some like landmark shots that I'd like to get, like that pier photo that you may have seen. That one I did plan out about a day in advance.
Okay.
Delicate art shot, we did plan that out a day in advance. And I just usually don't scout or anything like that, like a lot of landscape photographers do. And because I don't usually wait for the best time of day, and I don't have the best gear with a ton of dynamic range or anything, I have to save a lot of my photos in editing usually. And I personally really like editing. I know that you don't love editing as much, Nick, from your automation video.
No.
But I like climbing into Lightroom and being able to do those selective edits and really fine tune every part of the photo. And that's one of my favorite parts of the whole photography thing, is of course going out and taking the pictures, but I like coming home and plugging in the SD card and being able to really breathe a lot of life into the photos.
And how do you manage your photo library? Is that in Apple Photos, or do you just have desktop files and hard drives and stuff? Or
I'm not using Lightroom Classic. I'm using Lightroom CC. So basically, it uploads everything to the cloud, which is really convenient because I can switch devices. And a lot of the editing actually happens in the cloud too. So it's it doesn't have to like download every photo onto your hard drive. And if you have good internet speed, which I don't, then you can get really snappy editing, and it's good most of the time, unless if your internet is being slow that day. So I can usually get some really quick edits, like sliders, like right when as you slide it, it'll edit, which isn't something I've been able to do on my non-M1 devices, but it's really helpful. Like if I want to export to my phone, there's the Lightroom app for iOS. There's an iOS, iPad OS app, Mac OS, Windows, Android. It's on all the things, so it's the cloud part is really convenient.
Definitely. How about you, Nate? Do you have any photo editing? I know you're not currently a photo editor, but do you have any things that you used to do or currently do?
Well, I enjoyed it more than I think like most people do. Like, because I would just throw on like a podcast or something, and I could just sit there and go through photos for like hours at some points. Just there were some photos where I used to have an iPhone 7, so I wouldn't have portrait mode. So I used to like manually add depth of field.
Nice. Yeah.
And the editing those was difficult, but always fun. So I think I used Photoshop Fix for that. Actually, I can't quite remember. But yeah, nothing much with photography. It's just a lighter version of what Nathan does. So and I haven't done much with it recently either. So what about you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's always changing. I haven't found something that I absolutely adore right now, but this is what I've been doing. I keep most of my pictures in iCloud Photos, but I do want to change that. I have a NAS now, network attached storage, and so I'm kind of trying to wean myself off of iCloud. And I'd really like to be able to stop paying for the 2 terabytes every month, because that thing is just out of control. You just fill it up and you forget about it, and then before you realize it, you're staring at a terabyte and a half of stuff that you're like, what do I do with all this? So most of my pictures do still end up on iCloud Photos. That's kind of my big main library. But as far as managing photos and stuff, I typically at this point I'm only uploading the final edited version to iCloud Photos. Other than that, they're coming in from my camera raw with a JPEG, and then I toss those into just a folder basically, and in Finder, and then I go through that real quick just with the space bar on the Mac and just see which ones have some potential, and then I'll toss those ones into Pixelmator Pro on the Mac and dink around with them. It's a full Photoshop replacement, so I can do just about anything. All the color adjustments, all the filters, selective coloring, all that fun stuff. And then once I'm happy, I bounce that out and drop it into iCloud Photos. At some point, though, I would like to set up a pretty good, redundant, and easy to use file structure to just start tossing stuff on my NAS instead of letting it go all the way up to iCloud.
What's your reasoning behind saving JPEG copies?
So a lot of the times, so my camera specifically, I guess back up there, my camera saves JPEGs in 6,000 by 4,000 resolution, and it only saves RAW in I don't remember the exact resolution, but it's about a quarter of that for some reason. I don't understand why.
Is it like that with all Sony cameras?
I have no idea. I did do some research, and that's just how it works on my camera. Okay. I probably wouldn't have gotten this if I would have realized that, because I was looking for the full 24 megapixel image. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, hey, can I get by with the JPEG on this image? And probably like 6 to 7 times out of 10, I can get away with just like a JPEG and using that, and not, because the problem with the JPEG, for those you don't know, you're locked into that color profile. Basically, it has like an auto applied in camera color grade basically on it, and so you're kind of limited to the dynamic range, and you're limited. Your blacks are going to clip a lot earlier on a JPEG, and your whites are going to clip a lot earlier. And so, assuming the camera did its job well, and I as a photographer lined everything up, most of the time I can get away with the JPEG, and I'll use the JPEG. But if I'm in a circumstance where I can't use the JPEG, I'll sacrifice the video quality, the photo resolution, and use the RAW file. I will say, though, one of my favorite things about Pixelmator Pro is it has this ML Super Enhanced, which I think they talked about at the M1 event, actually. I think it was the M1 event. They had Pixelmator Pro people get up there. And basically what it does is it turns my 6,000 by 4,000 image into a 12,000 by 16,000 image using the power of machine learning. And it's not a perfect movie style zoom and enhance where, it's like, oh, wow, I couldn't read the license plate, but now I can read the license plate. basically what it just does is it cleans up all those pixelated lines. Like if you have like a kind of like a horizontal line, when you get in real close, you'll see like it's made out of pixely blocks. What this thing does is it reduces the size of the pixels by 4, cuts each one up into 4, and then makes its best guess on the geometry of the image. And I've had really fun success with that, and just being able to export images that are like 50 megabytes, just kind of always like, well, this is a big picture.
Lightroom has a similar feature, but it kind of it makes my 10 megapixel image coming out of my 12-year-old camera 20 megapixels, so it's fairly accurate, and it does look pretty good when it comes out, unless if there's like some overexposed part of the image, it kind of just gives up. But the raw cropping on the Sony's, that honestly might be a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize it, and this is the APS-C lineup, so I'm not sure if their full frames are different. But yeah, I just noticed that like months after I got the camera, I was like, huh, why? And it was after I left the iPad and I went to a Mac, and I was like, huh, why are these different like dimensions? What's going on here? But you can take both, so I'm fairly satisfied with it. You know, if I need the raw, it's there. It's less quality, whatever. But 6 to 7 times out of 10, I don't need the raw.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we talked about a little bit of audio, a little bit of photo. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention my current workflow, which I think you guys were wondering about, as it's always changing. I record just over 10 hours a week of content, and that fills up 256 gigs of raw 1080p camera data. So I'm not doing 4K just for storage reasons, and internet speeds. I don't have the internet speed to upload anything in 4K. In a timely manner, I can do it, but it's just not effective. So yeah, I'm creating about 250 or so gigs a week of content. I have 2 M1 computers. I have the M1 Cube that you guys might have seen that video. And then I also have a M1 13-inch MacBook Pro. I do prefer the laptop style of editing over the desktop style of editing. I was a huge fan of the M1 Mac Mini, which, if anyone's wondering, like, get the M1 Mac Mini. Like, that's the best price per dollar computer out there, as long as you have a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. If you don't have that set up, then base model MacBook Air is your best option. But I prefer to have a mobile editing setup. So what I'll do is I'll edit the video on the MacBook Pro, and once it's ready to export, I'll fire up Final Cut in. Well, I'll find the library file, because I have it all networked. Everything's like networked together. I didn't really realize how cool networking was until I had the 24-inch iMac, and like I was like, oh wow, you can like network these computers and like copy files and stuff. But I'll have an Ethernet running into this computer in my dock, and I'll be able to get on my Cube and grab the actual Final Cut file off of my MacBook Pro and have it render and export on the Cube, so that like this computer isn't getting hot or slowing down or anything. And I've really appreciated that, and just being able to have like another computer to like toss a YouTube upload on has also been kind of handy. So anyway, that's my current workflow, I guess. I don't know, it's not glamorous. Just
what do you mean? It's really glamorous. Look at all that bokeh in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Beautiful.
Well, the angle that you see is glamorous, but what you can't see is not glamorous, and that's every video ever. You were to turn the camera just a little bit in any Hollywood movie, you'd be like, oh, so this isn't real.
It's all mirage. You have a lot of lighting, I think, from what we see. What are your lights looking like?
Again, that changes too. Currently, there's some construction going on outside. So normally I appreciate natural light. I really do love working in natural light. I hate it when I have to close out my window and make it a kind of cave in here, because then I just lose track of time, and I leave the office at 9 at night, and I'm like, oh wow, it's dark. I missed the sunset. Bummer. 'Cause I do love sunsets. So currently I have it set up a little bit differently than I normally do because I'm trying to block out some sound. But I have 2 of the world's cheapest softbox lights from Amazon. I actually do have 3. It came in a kit of 3, but I only used 2. I think they were $100 for 3 lights and tripods and the bulbs and the softboxes and everything. So that was an awesome deal. But it also came with this great C-stand that was supposed to be used for the third light, but I don't actually need the third light in my setup, so I use the C-stand for my mic. That way we don't have to have a big microphone in the way. It can, be up there. As far as lighting, I prefer to keep everything at the neutral white balance of 5500 Kelvin, I believe is the measurement that they use, that 55K, whatever that is. And that's what these light bulbs are. And so everything is fairly neutral. It looks really weird in person. I don't know if you guys have been into Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever when they have like the little lighting demo area. And it's just like, oh, that's so harsh and cold, and it looks kind of unnatural on your skin in person. But on camera, it looks the way it should. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, that's some camera magic right there. Yeah. And I have some little LED light panels that I used to use before I got the soft boxes. I had just 3. Let's see if I even have any around. I do. There's like these little 7-inch LED light panels that are battery powered or wall powered that are pretty powerful, and I'll use those if I need like a kick light or something. But my current setup, at least, I typically don't. And then obviously, everyone's favorite, the bokeh ball tree. Oh, yeah. That is actually probably the jankiest thing in this what I call studio. It's technically a bedroom, but it's a studio to me.
I'd love to see it in focus one day to see what it really looks like.
You actually don't, I promise. It's not as nice as it looks. It's basically just a tree branch that I picked from one of the trees outside, and I painted it white, and I wrapped some fairy lights I got on Amazon around it, and it does not look good in person. But on camera, it looks really nice. For your
desk tour, do you not tour desk setup? Do you usually use your prime manual focus one?
100% of the time, yeah. I use a 50 millimeter f1.4, pretty basic prime lens. It's nothing fancy. There's tons of nicer glass out there. It's manual focus, manual everything. I kind of like that, to be honest. It just feels very tactile, and I've seen tons of YouTube videos where, a YouTuber's doing their A-roll, and then for some reason halfway through the video, the autofocus decides to focus on the wall behind them, and then they're out of focus. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind pulling focus at the beginning of a video and making sure it's on point, as long as I know it's not going to move throughout the entire video. So yeah, currently I pretty much exclusively use the prime lens, and it has a fairly narrow depth of field, so I can't get too far out of the focal plane, which is fine because I set my lights up for very specific. Be not well lit in either of these directions. But yeah, what were you asking of the lens? I also have a was it 18? I think 18 to 135 millimeter kit lens, and that has all the autofocus stuff, but I don't use that as frequently because depth of field doesn't make the bokeh balls look quite as nice. You got to have the bokeh balls, and those bokeh balls are not very far. They're maybe 6 feet away from me, so there's a good amount of depth of field happening there, which is kind of fun. But
it's not like where you can. It's not like where you can get really good bokeh on like an iPhone camera if there's like trees or anything, because those create really awesome gaps, but they're far away, so they only have to be a little bit out of focus.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe I do intend to do some more video work outside this summer, but as that happens, I think I'm thinking I'll probably be switching more over to the wider lens, because it's a 50 millimeter lens, and for any of you photographers out there who know, an APS-C camera is a cropped sensor. So basically, instead of 55 millimeters, I'm getting like 73 millimeters or something of focal distance, which is pretty tight.
That's really good compression though for your face. So.
Yeah. So what I like about it, a lot of wide angle lenses, they distort on the edges. So it can be unflattering in the wrong circumstances. And this is a pretty decent lens as far as just being fairly reliable. But problem is, like, this is the only angle that works in this room. Like, I couldn't do it any other way because it requires. I'm like 15 feet away from the camera, and that's really the only, because it's so tight. But yeah. What I have been working on, though, recently is my audio game. I understand that my audio game has been severely lacking for many years, and it's finally time to conquer this beast and improve it a little bit. So I have a Rode lavalier, which goes into my Sony's preamps, which are actually pretty good. The A-series Sonys have pretty good preamps inside. And so that does typically most of my video audio, the audio component of my video. I don't know. I like it because it's synchronized in camera. I have used external audio recorders before, but it's just always a bear in post to try to perfectly line that up on both sides. And sometimes if you're recording at 29.97 or you're recording at 48 kilohertz or whatever on the audio, you can get out of sync pretty quickly there. And it's just more trouble than it's worth for my fast food type content. But I have been getting a little bit more into ambisonics audio and kind of more soundscape stuff. And that's been a ton of fun. It's not really studio work. It's more, field work and going out into nature and recording things. This is the most recent addition. It's a H3 VR from Zoom.
That's quite a windscreen on it.
It looks like
a dead rat.
It looks like an either dead rat or like the back of a old guy's head. I don't know which one. It's like a gray windscreen.
Craig Federighi on a budget. That's
exactly. It's Microsoft budget. Craig Federighi.
Craig Federighi at home.
Yeah. Mom said that we had it at home. Mom was wrong. We didn't have Craig at home.
Your most popular tweet in like the last few months, it came from me. I'm starting to notice a trend, Nick.
Well, it was a good meme. I haven't checked up on that. Was that popular? I don't know.
It got like 50 likes, I think.
Okay.
I kept getting notifications for it, so
not bad. Yeah, 52. That's not bad. But yeah, I've been getting onto this ambisonics audio, and basically what this microphone does is it records audio in 3D, and so in post you can move things. It's super weird to describe, but basically you have 4 channels of left and right, so you have like 8 channels that you can adjust, and there's software, and it's recorded in Ambisonics A, which is a file format, and there's software out there that can like spin stuff around, and you can like focus in on stuff or mute stuff, and it's quite customizable. And I'm scratching the surface at what this can do, and so that's the most recent thing.
Is it
you can
like
obviously convert it into
spatial
binaural file.
audio? Is that the same kind of stuff that is related to spatial audio?
Yeah. So this is the kind of microphone that they use to capture sounds for VR games. So if you ever play like a headset VR game where it has binaural audio, they used a microphone like this because this is specifically designed for VR applications. So it has like an accelerometer and a gyroscope and stuff to like align it with everything. I haven't needed that because I don't record things in 360-degree video, but theoretically you could. And yeah, it's pretty crazy because you can be listening to something, and obviously it's not actual Apple stereo. What do they call it?
Spatial audio.
Spatial audio. Thank you. It's not actual Apple spatial audio, so it doesn't work with turning your head. But when you're in the software, you can turn the little globe thing, and if you move your head in conjunction with that, like it's like you're there again, and it's really weird because you're used to just like listening to just left and right channels, and being able to manipulate where the left, like in 3D space, you can turn yourself upside down and like really hone in on something. It's pretty cool. So anyway, I don't know. I'm experimenting.
If you ever want to record some ambience, a lot of the lo-fi music I make has needs for ambient stuff, so we can do a little collab in the future if you want with that.
I'll have my assistant call your assistant and see if we can set up a time.
I'll talk to my manager. I got him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was a joke. I'm like, let me get my manager. There it is.
Got it. I'm dense.
Jokes aren't really as funny if you have to explain them, but
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they're funnier. They can be funnier if you're not careful, because then the joke's on you. Yeah, let's see. What other things we talked about content creation wise?
One thing I kind of wanted to touch on was
go ahead, Nate.
how we all get our ideas for a project and how we start. Because I had made a tweet about how often starting projects is the hardest part. So I'm just curious, like, how you both get the idea and what you do to start it.
I've got something on my audio stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I have an interesting process, I would say, when it comes to the way that I write and produce music. It's not a very efficient process, and it causes headaches occasionally, but it's a little bit spontaneous, kind of like my photography workflow. So I often start with like a main like idea, like I'll just noodle around on keyboards or like guitar or whatever to really build a whole song on top of that. My song Mahogany, which Nick plays a lot during the live streams.
One of my
started out with
favorites.
just me putting a capo on my guitar and just trying out a few different chords, and it worked pretty well, and I built a whole beat on top of that, and I really just work from the ground up and kind of produce it as I go. The drawbacks with that is I often have to spend a lot of time going through every track and making sure that it's all produced to my liking, because I have to EQ everything, but oftentimes I'll like work on the tone of something as I go, which can lead to some just a lot of spending time looking for things to do when you could have just waited to do everything. Like there's supposed to be steps that you do, and I do all of them at the same time. That's my issue with it. A little bit tricky to explain, but it's a lot about just finding what it is that you need to do when you can just wait to do what you need to do. I'm kind of running out of how to describe it, but that's the gist.
I think I'm getting it. Like you have the 10 things that you need to do to make a great song, and you're doing all of them at once. Mm-hmm. And some of them work better when they're done after another one or before another one.
Like it's easier to just put down all the instruments, then do all the EQ, then do all of the volume mixing, then master it. No, I do it all at the same time. Like, so it's not the most efficient workflow, but it's the one that works the most when I'm like inspired to do something. So like I'll have an idea for like an effect on a track, and instead of waiting until the stage where I do the effects, I'll do it right then and there. And I think it's a lot more of an inspiration based kind of process rather than just doing all the steps in the order. But yeah, there's upsides and downsides to it.
That's good. That's you got when you're in the flow, like you just gotta stay in it. Like I've experienced with video projects and photo stuff. But like when you're having a moment of creativity, you don't want to like be worried about any procedures or like this needs to come after that. Like you just got to do it and kind of like live in the moment like that. And yeah, that's good. Glad to hear that. I guess the question was what was the question, Nate? Sorry.
Like it was how you start and how the idea generated. If that's applicable.
Well, first I check with my manager to see what brand deals I can get. No. I have most of my stuff video, right? And so either they're individual video ideas or projects. I think I have a lot of both of these things. And my video ideas, I have this nice list of let's see, let me pull it up here. I don't know, probably like a dozen or so video ideas that I've just kind of just have a running Apple Notes list of just, I'm driving in the car and I think, oh wow, this would make a great video. Or I'm in the shower where 90% of my ideas come from, and I'm like, oh wow, this would make a great video. You know, I have that list, and so whenever I'm like, I want to make something, but you know, what do I make right now? I have 3 or 4 hours. What do I want to make? I always go back to that list and try to do something off that. Because honestly, that's a kind of good way to filter the better ideas to the top. You know, if I'm going to go through that list of 12 things, I'm going to find the best one at the time to work on. So there's some mediocre ideas that have been on that list for a long time, and they're still non-existent, which is probably better for the whole world's sanity. The bigger projects, I guess, are kind of, they're kind of why I quit my day job, I guess, is because I wanted to be able to have the freedom to pursue these little bit bigger projects. Whether that be, the Today at Starbase show, which is, takes about 2.5, 3 hours to do every day, because that's a daily show, scripted, researched, fact-checked, edited, recorded, uploaded. It's a process. I have, other currently under wraps projects. don't want to give out too many spoilers,
We've
but
had
I have
so
other
many
projects
of those that we're yet to hear about. But
I know, and that's kind of fun part, because I get to do some stuff behind the scenes and work at it at my own pace, and feel like I don't feel like there's much pressure for me to have to come out with the next iPhone of ideas.
it's not like like Marquez, like the new product comes out and he's like, "Where's the video?" Like,
exactly,
you have to
right?
be on it.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't feel like I have that kind of pressure for most of my content. Now, today at Starbase stuff, I'm trying to be a little bit more timely because it's a daily show and things can get outdated that very fast. But as far as like your standard, idea, like this show, right? The Nick and the Nathans, we were doing a Twitter Spaces. Is that what it's called? And like we had a great conversation for an hour, and while we're talking, I'm like, oh man, I wish this thing was recording. Like, Twitter Spaces doesn't have a replay option. I'm like, oh, that was a good conversation. And like 2 or 3 days later, we were doing our first show. It's like it's that kind of a flexibility of behind the scenes stuff that I appreciate. And there are other projects that I'm still working on that are bigger projects, and they take a lot of time, and you'll see them when you see them. And so those projects typically, I guess you're asking where the spark, the inspirational spark comes from. It really depends. Like, for example, this show was sparked by a Twitter Spaces. I wouldn't have thought of doing the show if we didn't do that. The Talos of Tech podcast was sparked from a commenter in a live stream, on one of Drew's live streams. He's like, "Why don't you do a podcast?" And Drew's like, "Yeah, no, too much work." And I'm like, I could figure it out. I can figure it out. So it's kind of just random, I guess, on the bigger projects. And I guess the important thing though is when lightning strikes, and lightning strikes for me probably about once a week on like a really good idea. When that strikes, I just got to do it, and do it then. And it's kind of inconvenient sometimes when you're about to go to bed or whatever, and then you just have this idea, and you're like, that went my next 4 hours. Dang it. I'm going to be tired tomorrow. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. How about you? Where do you get your video ideas from?
So, well, for the trailers, it typically comes from just, if I've talked about this, if I've recently seen it, like the Inception trailer, I came up with the idea to do the video like 2 days after we recorded.
Okay.
And since I had been researching Inception, there was one clip that came up in my recommended, and I figured this could be good for a trailer. And that's basically what the process is for all these trailers. Like, it's a movie that I've recently seen, or that I've been watching a lot of commentary on. Like the Joker one, that's where that came from. I had recently rewatched a couple of the Joker TV spots, and I really loved the music that they used for those, and I wanted to find a way to combine two of them and make one really effective. trailer, and so that's where those ideas come from. And in terms of like the videos that I actually shoot, that's really spur of the moment. Like I'll be on a trip, like my Colorado videos. Like I'm just every time I go on a big trip like that, I'm planning on recording some kind of travel montage.
Yeah.
And the main stopper for me is just the initial process of gathering all the footage. It's just kind of boring. Because I'm sitting there for like hours trying to find the right clips on YouTube, trying to find them in 1080p, and so on, and screen recording all of them. I did find a way to download clips finally that's reliable, so
Okay.
I can start doing that now, which will save a good amount of time. But yeah, and then just starting the videos is like finding in a trailer you want to be hooked. Where you want to get a hook right away. Like the first 20 seconds are always the hardest for me because I'm just trying to find, okay, what's some good dialogue that'll get the viewer to want to watch the rest of this, and can I find that dialogue without background music, because that's a big problem because I'm not good at editing out background music.
Yeah.
So, and once I find that and I find the visuals to line that up, that's like a 20-minute or so process that's pretty difficult. And then after that, I can just I'm like autopilot, and I can get a first draft done in a couple hours. And that's kind of what happened with the Inception trailer. And then I'll just go through a few more drafts in the upcoming days, make sure I space apart the times that I watch them to make sure I'm like not too excited when I'm watching them and thinking they're great. Just because of the adrenaline, like I want to be like calm and make sure, okay, yeah, this is actually good. The timings line up, and so on. So that's kind of the main process summarized, I'd say.
That's great.
I can have that problem sometimes where I have an idea and I'm like listening to a song and I'm like, I want to do something like this. I'll put the idea down in Logic and I'm like, this is a great idea. I'll come back 2 days later and I'm like, why did I think this was good? Like I just have some ideas like that sometimes where like I get into like some new music. Like I find a lot of subgenres of the kind of music that I listen to, and it can often inspire me, but it can also make me think that I'm a lot better than I am at certain types of music, and I can have some ideas that I'm like, where was this coming from?
Yeah. There have been a lot of scrapped projects because of bad ideas. I don't know. I'm sure you guys have the same thing where like you think it's a good idea and you start it and then, oh wait, yeah, this is not going to work out the way I thought. So got to drop that. But a good amount of them end up falling through and working out. So
that's the fun of it, though. You know, you're in control of what you're making. So
exactly,
I have a rule: if I'm not loving what I'm doing, I'm not going to be doing it.
Exactly,
so if I get halfway through a fun idea, you know, I did a bunch of videos around the time that I did that automation video. And I know I recorded another one. It was like networking automation, and I like recorded a whole nother video, and I just wasn't feeling it when I was editing it, and I was just like, all right, delete. Just like,
yep,
I don't like it. It's not. I don't even remember what the topic was, but it was, you know, it was not memorable even to me. So it was like it doesn't need to exist, and it's that cool kind of freedom that you get. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of the worst feelings when you're forcing yourself to finish a project. Like there have been that happens with school projects sometimes, and I never want that for when I'm creating stuff for my YouTube channel or things like that. I always want it to be something I have interest in. I think I've been able to do that. So
I had a fairly similar experience to that kind of stress of creating something that you don't necessarily love. That cube video that I made.
Wait, tell me more about this. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
No, I know. No one's ever heard of it, and I talked about it way too much. But no, I knew it was going to be big. I didn't know how big, obviously. I didn't think that big. But I got to the point where I'd been obsessing over this for like literally 3 weeks. And I'd spent all hours of my day thinking about it, doing it, getting pieces together, researching, actually doing the project, videoing B-roll, all that stuff. And when it finally came down to editing it, I had a time crunch, and I gave myself a time crunch. We had recorded the Talos of Tech podcast on a Saturday, typically like we normally do, and we mentioned it, and it was in the background of the videos, and something that Drew and I were talking about. I hadn't really even started editing the video yet. I had all of the B-roll, I had like all my footage ready, I just hadn't started editing it yet. So I actually hadn't even I'd written the script, but I hadn't finalized the script and recorded that either. So I had like all the B-roll and like a fairly fleshed out script. That's all I had when we recorded the tech podcast where we're mentioning it. And the tech podcast goes out on Monday mornings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, crap. Like we talked about it on Saturday. I got to get this whole video together before Monday. Otherwise, the whole tech podcast is going to be no good because, it's sitting in the back of my video and I can't have that. That'd be a leak of the surprise. And so I spent all the rest of the day Saturday, working on it. And I don't think I finished on Saturday until like, okay, that's it. I'm remembering the whole timeline. It's a little fuzzy because there's just so much going on. I did finish the script. I did the A-roll, the talking head part before 7 or so on Saturday, and that's when the editing like actually started. So I got out my computer and got Final Cut open, and I started editing. It's only an 8-minute video, so it didn't take too long to like edit, but I had like over 2 hours of B-roll to comb through. And so like there's a little bit of a problem there. And finally I was done editing it, and I was happy with it by I don't know, 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm pretty proud of this, the edit is good, I'm good with this. So I hit export. I've never had it happen since in Final Cut, but somehow it just was not wanting to export. I don't know what the deal was, but it was like getting to like 50% or 52% or something, and it was just ending, and it was no error, no nothing. It was just like, oh no, I'm done. And I'm just like, what? So I tried it on my other M1 Mac Mini, and I was like, please work, and 52% didn't work. Now it's like 3 in the morning. I'm like getting physically stressed. Like it needs to be out by tonight so I can have, because it was a 4K file that's going to be like 20 gigabytes or something, and the upload was going to take all day just for me. And so it's like, I need to get this exported tonight so that it can start uploading and processing and all that fun stuff. And so yeah, all day, all night, it was having problems. I tried it on even my 12-inch MacBook, and that's when I went to bed. So I had the Final Cut file on a hard drive, and so I plugged it into my 12-inch MacBook, and I was just like, I don't know, maybe it's the M1 chip's having a problem. Let's try an Intel chip, and I let that thing process while I was sleeping, and I only got a few hours of sleep. It was very restless sleep, and when I finally woke up, I was like, did it work? And it had also crashed, and I was just like, no, what is the deal? I'm like doing all this research of what's going on with this video. Maybe it's something in my file. No, all of the supporting video clips are in the project. That's nothing's missing. What's going on here? It was a transition. I had this cross dissolve transition or something. It was a diagonal dissolve in Final Cut. Anyway, for some reason, it didn't like the transition. I use the transition all the time these days, but like that day, that project, that exact video did not like the transition. So I removed the transitions and exported it, and it worked just fine. But I was physically sick. Like I was like physically ill. And I was for like 2 days after. It was just like too stressful. And it's because I put a time pressure on myself that didn't need to be there. So I'm not going to be doing that again.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Was there any way you could have edited out of the background maybe? Of the tech podcast?
I probably could have, but about 30 minutes of the show was us talking about the project, if I recall correctly. So it wouldn't have been a whole... People would have realized something was missing. They're like, why did you just do 45 minutes? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It could have been, but it's like, I need to. And I'd been pushing the can down the road for a little while on the, getting it out the door. I was being lazy, I guess. Anyway.
I think you changed your Twitter name to just the white square emoji.
Yes.
You did, yeah.
I did. That was fun. Man, I had fun hyping that up. And that was an example of like a big project that took a long time to make, and I kind of kept under wraps as like a top secret project, and I think it pulled off fairly well. So
yeah.
be excited for
that
other top secret
animation
projects
that was
I'm
like
talking about.
Cube One. I'm like, what's this? Like an Office Space or something? It looks like a like. It was a little bit confusing at the start. Like he's like Cube One. I'm like,
Yeah,
That was
I had
the
no idea.
approximate dimensions of the G4 cube, and if you look real closely, the shadow of that animation was the cutout, because the G4 cube's base, it's like a piece of acrylic, right? And the base is resting on three sides of it, and the back is open because that's where the cables go. And so it was that kind of like stapler shape that I had on there too. So I was just laying down the hints, but who cares?
no one figured it out. I don't think.
So,
But now we can look back.
question for both of you guys: where do you want to end up, content creation wise? Go, Nate. You're on first.
Okay. Well, this is actually what I'm looking to do, like as a profession. I would like to do video production for like some corporate videos or like walkthrough videos, advertisements, social media videos, things like that. And so that's part of the reason I'm still keeping up with my YouTube. Like, it's not making any money, but I don't care because I'm getting a lot of good practice in, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping to go to college for and like continue doing in the future. Because that's like the main thing I've found passion for, and above everything else.
Your edits are really good. I see like a YouTuber wanting to hire you. Honestly, like
thank you. Yeah,
it's some really high quality edits. Like even just like the pool stuff. Like
Bumper Pool 7. That was a that was a really fun video. I randomly, it's like you said, Nick. Like I just randomly got the idea to do a dark section one night, so I brought my ring light down, brought a couple other lamps down, and that was all shot in one night for like 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
And it was just super fun because it was a really unique idea that I had never tried out before. And yeah, I'm glad people enjoyed that. And I recently, over the weekend, listened to your Interpretations album, and really, like, I really enjoy that. I think that's music I'll use to study to in the future and stuff, because I love lo-fi. So
glad you enjoyed it.
yeah.
How about you, Nathan?
Where I want to go with
do
it,
long term?
I want to see where it takes me, and I'll run with it as long as it's taking me somewhere. Like, if it's successful and if it's something that I can pursue, great. I'm not planning on it, but that'd be awesome. It's I think like ever since you licensed my stuff, that's kind of what like gave me a little faith that it could be successful. Like, oh, someone actually wants to use my music. That's awesome. But now I feel like I'm in the same situation as you after the Cube. I'm like, wait, now I have to follow that up with something probably like that. So it's interesting.
There's oftentimes less pressure than we internalize. You know, I for a month after I did the Cube video, and you know, I think it's almost at 200,000 views right now. I cannot believe that. I was in this like decision paralysis, and I was just like I didn't know what to do next. My next idea wasn't that good, and I was just like, people here want more of this, and I don't know what to do. Don't worry about it. Like when the creativity strikes, just be there to pick up on it. You know, when that lightning hits, just know that now you have, you know, tools and knowledge and experience on how to make that even better next time. You know,
Exactly.
I wouldn't stress about it.
It's easy to fall into the mindset of, okay, what do other people want? Like, okay, this video got a lot of views. Should I do something similar to try and get the same amount? And I had made a couple of videos with that mindset, and they weren't as fun, and they didn't even end up doing as well as I was expecting. So I like continue to just drop that mindset and stick to when creativity strikes, like that's the one that you want to focus on, because you'll have the most fun with that.
It's weird talking about that here because it's like, oh, this guy Nick really liked this stuff. I'm like, what should I?
No, it isn't about fulfilling what the audience wants, and this is something that actually Mike from the EV podcast was sharing with me when I was kind of in my post-cube funk, and I'll share it with you, Nathan. That was not your maximum point. That was something that I was really scared about. Is this cube, am I going to be known for this cube video for the rest of my life? Am I never going to be able to one-up this? Because I don't think I could one-up it. At this point, that was kind of a unique circumstance that it's all in, right? But it's a local maximum. I don't know if any of you have experienced much on calculus or curves or anything, but like there's this math term where you are measuring for the highest point of a curve. And it's, like kind of like a roller coaster type curve. And there's a math formula that can tell you any local maximum, basically. It can tell you, it goes across the line and it sees, is the next number bigger or smaller than the number that I'm at? And it goes up and down the line until it finds a point where the next number is smaller than its current number. And it knows that's a maximum point of a curve, right? But that could just be a local maximum. A lot of times, just like the stock market, right? If you imagine the stock market, you look at it right now and it's like, wow, it's higher than it's ever been. Or, I don't know, maybe it's down today. But if it's higher than it's ever been, you're like, wow, it's higher than it's ever been, right? Well, if you go back and look, in 2005 or whatever, you go back in time and you look at that same kind of graph where it just cuts off and you're like, wow, it's the highest it's ever been. And then you take that and compare it to where it is today. And it's like, it was not high back then. Do the same with Bitcoin or whatever. Doge is sad, but you do it with like a lot of these other, kind of things where you don't know the future, right? And so if you stop thinking of it as like, I need to one-up myself, and this is just a local maximum. Like, this was a high point, great, I was successful, awesome, congratulations, but like, it doesn't define me, and I'm going to continue doing what I was doing before. And because I was doing what I was doing before, it led to this local maximum. And if I continue doing what I was doing before, it will most likely lead to another local maximum, possibly higher, possibly not as high. But that's not what should matter. What should matter is the passion that you're putting into it and the enjoyment that you're deriving of the project. So
Totally.
Anyway, let me get off my soapbox here. Like I was on that for a little bit too long.
No, it was good. Thanks for that.
All right, any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Listen to my album.
Yes!
Do it. Yeah.
Self-plug. Do it.
Interpretations by Torch Decade, wherever you stream your music. And it wasn't just me, I had a friend, Luke, co-write a couple songs on there too, so.
Cool. And everyone should check out your channel too, Mr. Nate. You can't just have one plug here.
We can link all of our
maybe
creative stuff in the description.
Yeah, I think it is. Check out the description.
Good, yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this week. We will see you guys next week with some new content on content consumption. So stay tuned for that conversation. It'll be pretty good. See you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye.